We are here. Yeah, it's all bad. It's all bad. This boy knows what he's doing. This boy knows what he is doing. I don't own this, by the way. I mean, I physically own it, but like, I don't own the. Y'all knew what I meant. It's your boy back. We're here to talk about a couple things. Number one, boy, is this thing tragic. It really goes to show the parallels that have been painted between Gojo and. Ooh, I jumped right into it. My bad. We're on Jujutsu Kaisen chapter 261. Wait, you knew that. You knew that. Why am I tripping? You knew that from this. You knew it from this. What else would it have been? Well, I guess it's a fair point. What else would it have been? I digress. Anyway, we're here to talk about Jujutsu Kaisen 261, and right now it is depressing and it is tragic the way that Gojo has been going out and the way he's been used throughout the whole series, and it proves Kenjaku's point that Gojo is Gojo Satoru because he's the strongest. And there are so many parallels being painted by Geto being used by curses, Gojo being used by Jujutsu. It's it's a parallel line that runs long. Even though Gojo gave his consent, and ultimately that's one of the key differences between Geto and Gojo, it's still a tragic end. Or is it? Yuta managed to be one of the only people I think could bridge that gap in what it means to be the strongest in terms of what Gojo was going to be. Gojo knew that if he didn't lock in, we'd be at a lost cause, meaning that Gojo cannot be anything but the strongest. And it kind of changes the way things are and it makes it more refreshing. Because at the end of the day, what we got was the implication that Gojo Satoru is Gojo Satoru because he is the strongest and not the other way around. Without him, there's not much that goes according to plan. There's not much that's stopping them curses in the beginning of Shibuya. There's not much that was stopping Sukuna before he got all them fingers. We were way in over our heads without Gojo. And it's so unfortunate that the visual that Gege would like to paint, even though I still believe, y'all know I believe, that the way that Gojo went out was still tragic and still not believable, and he went out sad. I still believe that. Still believe that. Although the storytelling that's surrounding it, I appreciate. Although Kenjaku faces untimely death, this was something that we did not see coming. Well, the way in which it was done, we did not see coming. I always thought Kenjaku would take over Gojo's body as Gojo and Kenjaku duke it out. Well, Gojo fights Sukuna and Kenjaku at the same time. That was always my head canon, and not like in a successful way. More like Sukuna and Gojo fight, they're gassed out, Kenjaku swoops in, whoop de whoop. That's what I always thought would happen. But the fact that we have Yuta paralleling Gojo as well, there's so many storytelling aspects that Gege does well. And of course, we can always bash him for what he does wrong, but this is one of the key things he does well. He paints parallels over time. Yuta being a parallel to Gojo, even down to the part that Gojo was cut in half and so was Yuta. And it's so interesting that Yuta knows what Gojo needs to do in order to become stronger. And Yuta joins him. Everyone in Jujutsu has treated Gojo like a weapon. And I mean a literal weapon. They have treated him as if that's all he ever is, but his students did not, specifically Yuta and Yuji. And I guess technically you can swing towards Megami. Megami didn't really make much sense of it. It was kind of just a fact matter, I think, for him. But regardless, Yuta put his big boy shoes on and he used Kenjaku's CT to revive in Gojo's body. Now, I I don't know how to unpack this chapter. Even right now, as I'm swiping through it, it's something that's crazy to me. The previous chapter and a little bit of this chapter, we got Toto with the switch on his curse technique with the vibra slap, which is still crazy that he thought about that. That's so crazy, but it's cool at the same time. So I'm gonna let it rock. We get Sukuna basically almost having PTSD from Gojo, and this is why. And I want to point that out now. This is why I hate when people say that Sukuna was nowhere near Gojo. I mean, that Gojo was nowhere near Sukuna's level. Why in the world would Sukuna feel some type of way about Gojo if it was easy pickings? If it was a easy mid diff fight? And I'm tired. Ooh, emphasize tired of people running with that narrative. Gojo was boxing. Not only was he boxing against Sukuna, he was boxing against the author himself. Give credit where it's due. Stop slandering. Stop slandering. But back to the main point. Toto got a curse technique with a switch. Yuta got the stitches on the forehead, and we get the domain clash. This is what I've taken away from this chapter. Yuta is to be the next strongest, and to paint that parallel with Gojo and Sukuna, and Kenjaku, in essence, of being the strongest. The parallels of Gojo to Geto bleed on to Gojo and Yuta, and ultimately circle back round to the idea of being the strongest and how it relates to Sukuna. Because we still have not found, in my opinion, an ideology that matches or mimics Sukuna's strongest mentality besides Yuji's ideals alone. And I can't blame him for that. And I think where Sukuna was right in the writing is that he does whatever he wants. And, Gojo does whatever he can. And that is the way that I've always interpreted it, because Gojo, of course, is free as a bird, do whatever he wants, but he's always going to protect people. He's always going to save people. He's always going to do what he can to the best of his ability, but Sukuna just does whatever he wants. And I think that when you get those two dualities, you only have so far to go when you're clashing with those ideals. So my biggest concern for Yuta coming out is that two things are going to happen. Because mind you, his curse technique only has the 5 minute limiter. Y'all remember that. Whenever he has Rika, he has 5 minutes. And it's a little bit, well, actually, it's not 5 minutes. It's longer than 5 minutes. We don't know how long it is, but I'm going to assume it has a timer. Because mind you, he did it on Death's bed to use reverse curse technique when he switched his body. He did it on Death's bed. Then he used his curse technique. No, he used his curse technique to switch. Then use reverse curse technique to the maximum to revive himself into Gojo's body. And immediately he's coming back to pop domain expansion. There's something unsettling about seeing Gojo alive in this matter. It's a tragedy to say the least. And my theory is hopefully the parallels between Geto and Gojo stop there. In terms of Gojo, after the time is up of Yuta using the curse technique, either Yuta will die, in my opinion, or his soul will cease and maybe Gojo will come back to take control. That is what I really hope will happen. In this chapter, in the show recently, we have gotten too many parallels painted between Geto, Gojo, Yuta, and I think sooner or later we're going to start having some being painted with Sukuna. And we have to capitalize off of that. We already did a disservice to Gojo for the way we took him out. We did a disservice to Sukuna for the way we showed his curse technique. Like, we're just not. The man just pulled out Fuga. Before that was doing cleave and dismantle in, I don't want to say many ways, but in a few ways, not just one. So it was valid. I'm not going to take that away. It was cool. And maybe when I reread it, I won't have as much as a problem, which is what I plan to do. I plan to reread this to see if I really do have a problem with what was going on with Sukuna and dragging it out. But I really do think that that's the route that I'm going to go for now. I need to reread. And hopefully that'll do it for me. This chapter is depressing to say the least. And I don't really have a lot to say about it because it's quite tragic and it makes me want to keep reading. And although Gege has been criticized for many things for his plot points, I personally am not going to criticize him for this one. Because I think what we're getting to the precipice too of painting some really beautiful narratives and stories, even though they're not all the greatest. And what I mean by that is it's not all happy endings. It's not all rainbows. And that's the reality of Jujutsu Kaisen as a whole. We have to remember the story the way it's written. And that's just what it is. So we're gonna read next chapter. I'm tuned in. I'm locked in. You better not throw any more black flashes that look like they do absolutely nothing. JJK, lock in. Don't ruin it. You got us now. Don't ruin it. Peace.